This line is being used by hundreds of millions of people every year, Mexicans. And so the subway lines and the wagons will say, made in China. If the subway system works 24 hours, 7 days a week, people will say, you know what? I don't know about, and very humbly and very politely, but I don't know about the discussions between Mr. Biden and Mr. Xi Jinping. I know that China works. It works every day, 365 days a year. Look, in 2024, we have been working in detail in the last more than 2 decades in the 21st century on this socioeconomic relationship between Latin America and the Caribbean with China. I would say that in very general terms, the relationship has been very positive, very dynamic, and very challenging for both parts, for the region, Latin America and the Caribbean, for China, and for each of the Latin American countries. No? The Chinese presence in Latin America has increased at all fields, no? From military to nuclear stations, to trade, to cooperation in art, in academics, in education, in sports, and whatever you can imagine. Our experience has been that today we have to distinguish between specific fields of cooperation and linkages between Latin America and the Caribbean and China. One is trade. So China, in the last 20 plus years, has become the second largest trading partner of the region of Latin America, only after the United States. And I remind you, early in the 21st century, the share of China was less of 1% of Latin America's trade. Today, it is between 10 and 12% and still growing very quickly. And in many countries, China is already the first trading partner. In other countries, such as in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, and in other countries, mainly in Central America, but also in Mexico, China has become the second largest trading partner. So lots of detailed discussions, analysis that we have been supporting in each of the countries, from Argentina to Mexico, again, together with counterparts in China, on regional effects of trade, on the effects of trade with China in terms of employment, in terms of ecological impacts, in specific global value chains from soya beans to electronics to auto parts, etc. The second field, at least as important, is financing. China has become a very important source of financing for Latin America. In the last decade, in several years, China has been more important than the Inter-American Development Bank and the World Bank together. It depends on the specific year. Sometimes Chinese development banks have been with lower loans than these institutions. No? A third topic is overseas foreign direct investment. China has become a major investor in the region. In our network, we publish since 2017 every year a monitor on China's OFDI, overseas foreign direct investment, with statistics using MOFCOM statistics, but also Latin American statistics. A brief monitor, 10 pages regarding the main annual issues of Chinese OFDI by sector, by country, by property, etc. And finally, a fourth topic, that socioeconomic topic that we believe that is fundamental in the socioeconomic relationship, are infrastructure projects. China has become a major player in Latin America. Again, there are many other players, US American, other foreign players, in addition to Latin American firms. But we have witnessed almost 300 realized infrastructure projects in the 21st century, most of them huge and very large hydroelectric power plants, but recently also smaller projects regarding public transportation, the installation of green energy parks in solar energy, etc., etc. Let's put it politely, where both Chinese and Latin Americans have not paid sufficiently attention to the topic, which is the employment generated by infrastructure in many cases is important, the indirect, the direct employment, the amount of the projects can be very substantial. But the new stage of the increasingly mature relationship between Latin America and China and the more complex relationship today between both parts is how Chinese infrastructure projects are changing everyday life in Latin America. You have to imagine, for example, one of the almost 300 projects by Chinese firms in Latin America is the renovation of a metro line, of a subway line in Mexico City, Line 1. No? This is being pursued by CRRC, a Chinese firm. And so this renovation, this new line, it was just inaugurated last month, no? This line is being used by hundreds of millions of people every year, Mexicans. And so the subway lines and the wagons will say, made in China. If the subway system works 24 hours, 7 days a week, people will say, you know what? I don't know about, and very humbly and very politely, but I don't know about the discussions between Mr. Biden and Mr. Xi Jinping. I know that China works. It works every day, 365 days a year. By the way, if it works on Mondays and it doesn't work on Tuesdays and on Saturdays you have problems, people will say, you know what? Made in China does not work. No, I have high expectations. I have been dozens of times in Shanghai, in Beijing, but also in Chongqing and many other cities. I have the highest expectation that this subway system and infrastructure in general, that they will work like in China, and they work 24 hours, 7 days a week. So again, hydroelectric power plants, public transportations, Wi-Fi networks, metro, airports, ports, etc., are changing, increasing the quality of life, everyday life in Latin America and the Caribbean. I think this is a people-to-people relationship, which is very substantial. Each of these four fields required specificities, a detailed analysis, and I always argue against green juices. No, in Latin America and in many parts of the world, green juices are very fashionable. They are very healthy. You put orange juice and you put lots of things. It's a liquid salad, but at the end you don't really know what you are drinking. No, so we argue very much against green juices in the Latin America-China relationship. I don't have anything against a holistic perspective of the relationship, but in general, very positive, and expectations are that this relationship should continue growing, probably not with the same dynamism than in the last decade, but it will continue to grow very strongly in each of these fields and with specific challenges in each of these fields. No, trade is completely different than investment, completely different than financing, completely different than infrastructure. You have domestic issues in China, in Latin America, policy issues, instruments, etc., etc.